السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى أما بعد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وألهمنا رشدنا يا رب العالمين. قال الله تعالى: والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا ذلك الفوز العظيم. صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected Muslims, unfortunately we haven't been able to have class for the last 2 weeks, and today also I wasn't feeling too well, but Shadman messages me every week, is there class today, is there class today? So I felt a bit uncomfortable telling him no 3 weeks in a row. Before we come on to our guest of tonight, last week the reason I couldn't make it to the class was we received the death and the news of the death and the demise of the father of a brother of ours. And the moment we received the news of the death, I was actually driving back. I was in Miami for the weekend last Sunday, and as I was driving back to Orlando, we received the death and I flew on that Sunday evening. But the reality was, when the news was given, the first thing that came to my mind with regards to this person was, and I want you and I to take a moment to think, when the announcement is made of my death and your death, what's the first thought that's going to come to people's minds? For many people, it's not going to be the fact that you perform salah in the first saf. It's not going to be about how big was the house that you owned. It's not going to be about possibly the charity that you gave. But a lot of people, the first thought that will come to them is, how did you make them feel? And when we speak about this uncle that passed away, the one sifah that he had was, whenever you saw him, he always smiled at you. Every single time I saw him, Allah is my witness, he had a wide smile on his face, full of warmth, full of love, full of compassion. And immediately we used to think about the hadith of Jarir bin Abdullah al-Bajali radiyallahu anhu. Jarir radiyallahu anhu says that, ما حجبني رسول الله وما لقيني رسول الله منذ أسلمت إلا تبسم في وجهي. That from the time I accepted Islam, I never came in front of the Rasul, I never met the Rasul except that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiled when he saw me. And that's the one vivid memory that Jarir radiyallahu anhu held on to. Sometimes we think to be pious means to be rigid. We think being pious means to be strict. We think being pious means we're not allowed to laugh, we're not allowed to joke, we're not allowed to have some banter. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that person. Piety, of course, for the Rasul was at an elite level. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam found moments to connect with people. So the lesson we begin with for tonight is, when these speakers echo the news of the death of your demise, what's the first thought that's going to come into the minds and the hearts of people? Is it about how warm and loving and caring you were? The fact that when people met you, they felt comfortable to speak to you. The fact that when people spoke to you, they felt that you gave them your undivided attention in the middle of a distracted world. That brother, whenever I saw him, he gave me time. Today, unfortunately, we got no time for our families, let alone anyone else. So that's number one. And number two is also, last week, the world was in mourning with regards to the death of a great scholar. And the companion and our guest of tonight is a companion who I have chosen based off the death of that scholar. And one lesson you and I can take from the life of that scholar was, dream big and have high aspirations. Because the reality is, in Arabic they say, Mawtul alim, Mawtul alam. The death of a scholar is the death of the world. I remember I was seated in the dars of Mufti Sa'id Palampuri rahimahullah in Darul Ulum Deoband, approximately like 8-9 years ago. One teacher teaching one kitab to 1,500 students at one time. It was a unique experience. And he used to mention at least once a week, whenever the news of the death of a scholar was given, he used to say, the problem we have, the pandemic we are experiencing is scholars are dying, scholars are being uplifted. As the hadith of the Rasul states, that Allah won't just take away knowledge. We won't wake up one day and knowledge has suddenly been taken. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يَقْبِضُ الْعِلْمَ بِقَبْضِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Allah will take away knowledge by taking away scholars. And then Mufti Palampuri rahimahullah used to say, today we lost a great scholar, but I cry because there's no one to replace that scholar that we've lost. The world is losing scholars over the last 5-6 years since COVID. So many great giants. Mufti Rafi' Uthmani of Pakistan, Sheikh Qardawi of Egypt, so many scholars of the Hijaz, gone. The ilm that they had gone with them. But there's not people to replace them. People in communities are leaving. These brothers used to attend the durus of Mufti Mahid, he left. Allah doesn't just take away knowledge. You wake up one day and people are gone. But when you and I show a disinterest for deen, when you and I don't show importance to learn the religion, then people will come and people will go. You'll be left with a beautiful masjid, but with no talab and no desire to learn the deen of Allah by those people who pray in that very same masjid. So this scholar was born in Pakistan. He was born, I believe, in Multan, in those areas. At the age of 16, he becomes a hafiz. And one of his students last week whilst giving a lecture said that when I met the sheikh, and I asked the sheikh, what age did you become hafiz? And he said 16. I said, sheikh, that's a bit old. Many people have committed the entire Quran to memory by the age of 11, 12, 13, probably maximum 15 for the most part, generally speaking. And then the scholar says to this student that, you know, when I was growing up in my family, we never had wealth. I come from a very, very poor family. And unfortunately, the reality is, when you look at the madaris, what are the students that are studying the deen of Allah? Where do they come from? A lot of the times, those students are coming from impoverished backgrounds. They're coming from poverty-struck homes. Because the moment some money comes in, then now I need my child to be a doctor. Now I need my child to be an engineer. Now the deen of Allah, why would I exhaust my energy and my resources behind my child to study anything other than something that is appreciated in dunya? Maulvi ka kaun izzat karta hai? Who has love for it? So he says, I was in a family, sakht famine, a lot of difficulties. Shadman, I'm going to need some water, please, man. A lot of difficulties. Whatever we earned for the day is what we ate in the evening. But finally, I learned and I memorized the Quran in my area, in my city. And after that, I went to Lahore. In Lahore, I started to learn the sab'a qira'at. From Lahore, my journey took me to Karachi. He says, that was the first time I saw the author of Ma'arif al-Quran, Mufti Shafi' rahimahullah. And Mufti Shafi' rahimahullah, after I studied the Ashara Qira'at, he made me the Imam of the Darul Ulum of Karachi. And this scholar, his name was Qari Bashir Ahmed Siddiq rahimahullah. Born in Pakistan, taught you and I that no dream is too big for you and I to wish to achieve. He says, I was the Imam of Darul Ulum Karachi, and I used to stand on the sajjada, and behind me was Mufti Shafi', the Grand Mufti of Pakistan. And he says, despite the level of mahara and excellence I had in the field of the science of qira'at, my legs would tremble. But he says, I fulfilled this responsibility to the best of my ability. Then he said, there was a calling within me that I want to go to the city of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says, I went to Mufti Shafi', and when I went to Mufti Shafi' rahimahullah, many a time, it's easy for a senior to compel the junior to stay with them. That, you know what, we need you. Our institution is dependent on you being connected to us. If you leave, what happens to our institution? But he says, Mufti Shafi' was so helpful in my transition from Pakistan to Medina that he helped me get a passport made. I never had a passport. He helped me with the entire process, and he says, I moved from the city of Karachi, and Allah took me on my journey to the city of Madinatul Munawwara. He says, when I went to the city of Medina, I started to seek out the great teachers of Quran. And one of those teachers who was the greatest teacher of Quran in the masjid of the Rasul was Sheikh Hassan al-Sha'ir. He says, I studied with him and I received ijazat from him, and that's when my teaching journey began. This scholar was a scholar who was born in Pakistan. But probably and possibly in the history of the masjid of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no person has taught Quran for as long as he has. When you and I go to Medina and we say Allahu Akbar behind Sheikh Salah al-Budair, a great Imam of the Masjid of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sheikh Bashir, a Pakistani scholar and Qari, was the teacher of Sheikh Salah al-Budair, hafidhahullah. He was the teacher of Sheikh Muhammad Ayyub, rahimahullah, who passed away, also a former Imam of the Masjid of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the teacher of the Imam of the Haram, Sheikh Muhammad al-Qasim, Sheikh Muhsin al-Qasim. When you go to Mecca, he was the teacher of Sheikh Ali Jabir. He was the teacher of multiple Imams of Mecca and Madinatul Munawwara. But where did his journey begin? And you and I remember him as being the teacher of Sheikh Ayyub. But what did Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari rahmatullahi alayhi write in his hikam? مَنْ لَمْ تَكُنْ بِدَايَتُهُ مُحْرِقَةً لَمْ تَكُنْ نِهَايَتُهُ مُشْرِقَةً. What happens when a scholar passes away? We marvel at their achievements. We marvel at what they achieved in the world. But there was a day where he says there was no food on my table. There was a day where the meal for the day was a glass of water and some khubz that we dipped in that water, and that was our meal for the day. Today we want our children to be great, but those sacrifices are not made. What did the scholars of the past used to say? عَلِّمُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ الْقُرْآنَ فَإِنَّ الْقُرْآنَ يُعَلِّمُهُم كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Teach your children the Quran, and the Quran will teach them everything they need to know in how to navigate this journey of life. But today Quran is never the priority for us. Sheikh Bashir was those scholars, that was one of those Qur'an that if you went to him, and I remember about 15 years ago, or probably even 18 years ago, in the year 2007 I believe it was. I was like 14, 15 years old, and I participated in the competition in Saudi Arabia. And Sheikh Bashir had this pillar where he sat in the exact same place for most decade after decade. That's where he's taught Quran from. And I was with my father, and my father is a very close friend of Qari Siddiq in India, and Qari Siddiq told my father that take Muhammad to recite to Sheikh Bashir. I'll give him a call and take him. I remember it was whatever month it was, I was with my dad in that musabaqah, and one day after Maghrib, my dad took me, he said, we're going to go to see Sheikh Bashir. So we went to see Sheikh Bashir, and I'm participating in that musabaqah. I had memorized, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, the Book of Allah, the Quran, I had completed memorization. And if you're participating in a competition, you feel some type of way that, Alhamdulillah, my recitation's got to be at least average or decent, otherwise I wouldn't be representing the United Kingdom. I promise you, by the qasam of Allah, I sat in front of him, and this was the experience of multiple scholars and qurra from across the globe. When you sat in front of him, as a hafid of Quran, or even some people who are qurra in their capacities, teachers of their communities, when you sat in front of him, you wouldn't be able to go past A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Your ayn isn't correct. Your dhal, the makhraj isn't correct. Your pronunciation of this. People say that we studied Surah Fatiha with him for 3 to 6 months alone. The dedication to ensuring that we recite the Quran correctly. And today the ummah, instead of Qul huwa Allahu ahad with a qaf, we say Kul with a kaf, and we've changed the entire meaning of the Book of Allah. We've distorted the meaning, and we couldn't care less. Qul with a qaf means say. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, He, Allah is one, Hu Allahu ahad. We say Kul with a kaf. Kul in Arabic means eat. When you command someone, eat. What a distortion of the Quran, but we couldn't care less. And these people dedicated the entirety of their lives to serving the Book of Allah. To teach you and I that you can be from Pakistan, you can be in the West, but your commitment to the deen and your contribution to the ummah can know no bounds. If someone from Pakistan born in a village, in a chota sa gaon as they call it, with no food to eat, Allah can take him on a journey from there to Lahore, to Karachi, to the city of the Rasul, holding a feat and an accomplishment. No person has taught the Quran as long as he has. 62 years he taught the Book of Allah in the Masjid of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can't give 62 minutes for the Quran. When was the last time consistently for 6 days we recited Quran for a few moments? Wallahi, I promise you, you make the Quran your best friend, your companion. You spend moments every day with the Book of Allah, and the trajectory of your life by the qasam of Allah will change. The Quran is kalamul muluk, it's the speech of the King of Kings, and it's the King of all speeches. Why did the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, humanity change when Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq came to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? When these ayat were revealed to the Rasul, there was one kid in the masjid, he wanted to get married. I think I've said this before. And as he went to the uncle to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage, there was 3 boys. So the first kid goes to the uncle, he says, Uncle, I want to marry your daughter. So the uncle asks him, what's your name? He says, my name is Yusuf. He says, okay, Iqra Surah Yusuf. You want to marry my daughter? Recite Surah Yusuf. Let's see what you got. So the kid starts to recite Surah Yusuf, and he makes mad mistakes. The Shaykh says, La tatazawwaj, I'm not going to allow you to marry my daughter. Bekar, bewakuf, useless. He calls the second kid, what's your name? My name is Muhammad. He says, okay, recite for me Surah Muhammad. The kid recites Surah Muhammad. Surah Muhammad is a short surah but difficult. He's stressed, he's anxious, he's panicking, he's shivering, he makes mistakes. The Shaykh says, I'm not going to allow you to marry my daughter. The third kid comes and he says, I want to marry your daughter. The Shaykh asks him, what's your name? He's already seen what's happened to his two brothers. So he says, Shaykh, mera naam kul huwa Allahu ahad hai. Shaykh, mera, if we were to have got married based off the Quran that we know, probably most of us would still be single. The criteria for that uncle, for his daughter was, because if you have Quran in your life, it means you're disciplined. A person who can give 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes of their daily routine to the book of Allah. I remember I was in a masjid in Boston, Massachusetts, and I gave a talk about the importance of Quran. Allah is my witness. As I exited, before I could exit, a brother of Somali descent came to me. He said, Shaykh, this is my calendar. This is my daily routine. You tell me where can I find time to put Quran in and help me to allocate some time to recite Quran. And I told him, brother, that slot before you leave for work of 15 minutes is empty. It might be early. It's 6:45 in the morning, but you got 15 minutes. He said, I make a azam to Allah that from today onwards, every single day, 15 minutes of my day will be given to Quran. What's the complaint of the Rasul? How does the Quran paint the picture of the Rasul standing in front of Allah on the day of Qiyamah? وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ. The Rasul will stand in front of Allah, Ya Rabb, إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh Allah, my ummah and my nation, they abandoned the Quran. Who's the nation of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It's myself and yourselves. Do we want the Rasul to complain about us in front of Allah tomorrow on the day of Qiyamah? Is it that difficult to give 15 minutes? I promise you, on your way home today, check your screen time. Go on your settings, go on your screen time, and it will tell you exactly how much time you spend on the apps that you have on your phone. And I promise you, you'll be shocked. Sometimes I check it, I'm like, yo, I don't remember using my phone for 6, 7 hours a day. But that's the reality. You're on your phone, you don't even notice. If you can't pick up a mushaf and it's too difficult, download the Quran app. And every day check your screen time at least 15 minutes a day. There's so many apps that will help you. TikTok 2 hours, Instagram 1 hour, Snapchat 45 minutes, Safari 3 hours, Google Maps 45 minutes, and then no Quran. How will you and I ever be successful? How will our children be successful if we've deprived them from Quran? There's a sheikh in Boston by the name of Sheikh Abdullah Al-Khalti, a great Qari from Morocco. He says, my father, in his house, every child is a hafiz. He says, all my siblings, brothers and sisters, male and female, everyone is a hafiz of the kitab of Allah. That's a family. You know, at the time of the Battle of Uhud, Rasulullah ﷺ, when the announcement was made that he's passed away and people started to attack him, Nusayba bint Ka'b radiallahu anha went to defend Rasulullah ﷺ. And her husband and her 2 sons, Abdullah and Habib, also defended Rasulullah. When Rasulullah ﷺ looked up and he sees husband, wife, and 2 sons defending me, he says, Ni'mal bayt. What an amazing family this is. What an amazing family this is that the husband, the wife, the 2 sons, despite their young age, are defending me. This is a family of Islam. Today our families have become void of Quran. Today there is no huffaz in our entire lineage sometimes. And we're so lost, we don't even think, you know what, in our entire lineage there's no hafiz. Maybe let me change the trajectory. You know, they speak about generational change. And normally it's connected with wealth. That I'm the person who created the generational change in terms of wealth, in terms of building something dunya-wise. But how many people are the means of generational change in terms of the trajectory of Iman and Quran? So Sheikh Bashir rahimahullah, he traveled the globe. He passed away at the age of 87. And he always had a wish and a desire that he passes away in the masjid of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He lived a very difficult life. Many a time scholars asked him that, Hame kuch nasihat, give us some advice. When he came to the West, one of the advices he gave time and time and time again is number 1 advice, luqma halal. Luqma halal, ensure that whatever you consume and the money that you make is halal, because that will have a direct impact on your progeny and your children. He was about 85 years old 2 years ago. He wanted to travel to, I believe it was America, the UK and Australia. And some of the doctors said, Sheikh, you've got a clot of blood in your feet. As a consequence, due to the altitude in the air, it's going to be fatal. All the doctors agreed that we're not going to allow you to travel. One of his students says that we had a business class ticket booked for him. We had to convince him that, Sheikh, it's not safe. It's better you don't travel. Finally, somehow they spoke to him and he agreed. They say 2 weeks later he's walking, and he's walking with a firmness, and he's walking with a pace, and he's telling his students, look, I'm fine, I can walk. Let me go, my students are waiting for me. Because what he used to do is, Maghrib to Isha, he sat at that pillar. As he would leave the masjid and go to his car, today when you and I go and we're traveling, we're listening to the radio, the music, whatever it is. When he used to go from the masjid to his car till he reached home, he would immediately pick up the phone, and his international students, he would start listening to them. He had a lot of students in the United States of America. 2 years ago, even I believe a year ago, he was in New York. Many of his students were in the Western world. So then he tells his students, look, I'm fine, I want to go. Finally, they allowed for him to travel. He stayed a month in Australia, spent 2-3 months in the UK, spent, I believe, 3 weeks in the US. There was a time when he was very ill on his travels. And someone asked him, Sheikh, what's your wasiyah? Who should perform your salatul janazah? He said, I'm not going to make a wasiyah of who should perform my janazah, because imagine I'm in a foreign land. I don't want to have to compel someone to have to travel to fulfill my wasiyah. So Allah is in control. Allah is in control of everything. Don't worry about where I will die. My Allah will take care of me. 2 weeks ago, when he was very ill on his deathbed, Sheikh Salah al-Budair, the Imam of the Haram over the past 2 decades, called him, his student. And then he made a request. He says to Sheikh Salah al-Budair, Hafidahullah, I have one request. Would you be kind enough to lead my Salatul Janazah? Would you be kind enough to lead my Salatul Janazah? And Sheikh Salah al-Budair responded that, no Sheikh, abshir, abshir, glad tidings, Allah is going to give you a beautiful life. You still got many years ahead of you, and we need your companionship. We need your mentorship. When he passed away, the Maghrib of that day was performed and led by none other than Sheikh Salah al-Budair, Hafidahullah, his student, and he recited, Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. The student leading the janazah, the Maghrib before the janazah of his teacher, and he was emotionally moved. You could tell by his recitation that he was moved, because that's my teacher. That was the level of love and mahabba and respect and honor between a teacher and a student of Quran. Sheikh Salah al-Budair is the Imam of the Haram. They have to have guards around them to protect them from people who wish evil upon them. But Sheikh Salah al-Budair took off that gold or whatever color robe they wear. He went to the graveyard of his teacher, and as the burial procession was taking place, his student, the Imam of the Masjid of the Rasul ﷺ, stood there and watched and participated in the entire procession. One of the students says, I believe it was Sheikh Yasir Qadi or someone, there was a clip going around. He says, one day I was waiting to read to Sheikh Bashir. And as I'm waiting in line, Sheikh Yasir Qadi is also his student. He says, as I was waiting in line, someone came, and the Sheikh spent so much time speaking to him that all of a sudden my time to read was gone. The Isha Adhan was given, and I was unable to read that day. He says, I was frustrated, so I asked one of my colleagues, who was that person that came to meet Sheikh Bashir? He took our time and I was supposed to read. They say that was Sheikh Ali Jabir, the Imam of the Masjid of Makkatul Mukarramah. He came to visit Sheikh Bashir because Sheikh Bashir was his student. When you and I study deen, understand one thing, it doesn't matter where you're from. When we pick up the Sahih of Imam Bukhari and we see the legacy of Imam al-Bukhari, was Imam al-Bukhari Arab? Was he from the Arab lands? He wasn't an Arab. Arabic wasn't his first language. But the contribution to the deen of Islam is like none other. It's not about where you're from. It's not about the language you speak. It's about the vision and the commitment that you have of what do you want to achieve in terms of your contribution to the deen of Allah. Now with that, we come to our guest of tonight. Our guest of tonight is a companion that one day in the masjid of the Rasul Rasulullah came in. And as Rasulullah came in, Rasulullah comes to this companion and he says to him, أَمَرَنِ اللَّهُ أَنْ أَقْرَأَ عَلَيْكَ. O my beloved companion, Allah has commanded me that I recite Quran to you. So the Sahabi is taken aback. He says, Allahu sammani lak. Are you sure that the hukam and the command was to read to me specifically and my Allah took my name? Or was it just a general command that, oh Muhammad, read Quran to someone? And the Rasul says, no, your Allah took your name and Allah commanded me to read to you specifically. فَجَعَلَ عَيْنَاهُ تَذْرِفَانِ. The Sahabi says, all of a sudden I couldn't control myself. I started to cry. I started to cry that my Allah took my name. My Allah told his Habib ﷺ to come and recite the book of Allah to me. According to some riwayat, Surah Bayyina, لَمْ يَكُنِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. And he says that the Rasul ﷺ recited this surah to me. And our guest of tonight is none other than Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiyallahu anhu. The greatest qari that this ummah has ever seen. Most people who have studied qira'at, their ijazat go through Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu. What a companion he was. We don't know too much about his life. In all honesty, there's not much that's been written because he accepted Islam. He was from Medina, from the Khazraj tribe. So he accepted Islam around the time of the hijrah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was there for the second bay'ah when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told those Sahaba, as Sheikh Umar spoke about in the Seerah conference, that if you fulfill your pledge to me, Jannah is yours. That's who he was. So he only got, 10 years with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to Medina, the first person who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said will be a scribe, who will put pen to paper, who will write the Quran to protect the Quran is none other than Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu. There were 4 people who had memorized the Quran to a great level, more than anyone else in the time of Rasulullah. One of them was none other than Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu. One day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes to him, and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells him, as partially probably testing him, that, "Oh Ubayy, ayyu ayatin fi kitabillahi a'zam." Oh Ubayy, what's the most powerful ayah in Quran? So he says, "Allahu wa rasuluhu a'lam." Allah and His Rasul know best. That's how Sahaba were. Sahaba was so careful when it came to voicing their opinion on the deen of Allah. And today, by the qasam of Allah, scroll through TikTok, or Muslim TikTok as they call it, every other person is voicing their opinion. Every other person on TikTok has some qualifications to comment on the deen. And as a consequence, what's happening? People are losing value for scholarship. 1400 years of scholarship is being lost. Why? Because the 18-year-old who went to Egypt for 3 months, learned how to converse in Arabic 2-3 sentences or kalimat. He went through Bayna Yadayk, the general curriculum, now feels I have the right to have an opinion in deen. So Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu says, "Allahu wa rasuluhu a'lam." Allah and His Rasul know best. Rasulullah says, "No, I want to know the answer. I want to know what you think." So immediately he says, "Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum." Immediately he says the Ayatul Kursi. He says the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam placed his hand on my chest. Wallahi, the touch of Rasulullah was magical. The touch of Rasulullah was magical. The spiritual change people experience just by the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam touching them on their heart or on their head or on their chest or on their head. Change took place. One Sahabi says, there was a battle and I lost my eyesight. And when I lost my eyesight, I came to the Rasul and I complained, "Ya Rasulullah, my eye, I can't see." He says the Rasul passed his hand over my eyes. How did Allah restore my eyesight? In the later years of my life, on a dark night, I was able to weave and I was able to find the eye of the needle to put the thread inside with total ease. That's how powerful my eyesight became. The Rasul is coming back from the battle of Hunayn and they stop to pray salah. The mu'adhin gives adhan. There's a group of youngsters and one of the youngsters is mocking the adhan of the mu'adhin. One of the youngsters is mocking the adhan of the mu'adhin. The mu'adhin concludes, the salah concludes, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to those youngsters. Look at the hikmah of Rasulullah. Look at the wisdom and just the personal connection that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had with people. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, which one of you was the one that was mimicking and mocking the adhan of the mu'adhin? So that young boy says, فَأَشِيرُوا إِلَيَّ. My friends, they ratted me out, they snitched on me, they said it was him, it wasn't us. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sends the rest of them away. And then he calls this young boy close. And he tells the young boy, you were mocking the adhan of the mu'adhin. I will say the adhan and I want you to repeat it because you've got a beautiful voice. The Rasul had a very, very sharp eye for noticing talents within people. Today, unfortunately, a parent can't see the talent of their own child because the parent wants to live their dream of what they wanted for their lives through their children. I wasn't able to become a doctor, aapko doctor banna hi padega. But your child's talent is different. What your child can achieve is different. Why are we compelling that child to be something that maybe doesn't even interest him? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never went to Umar and said, you have to be the qari of the ummah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam understood Umar has a different talent. Abu Bakr has a different talent. Ubayy, okay, Ubayy, your talent is Quran. You will give your life for the Quran. That's your calling. So then the young boy comes, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says the adhan, the young boy starts to follow after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When they come to Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, the Rasul says it, the young boy lowers his voice. Rasulullah says, what's wrong? He says, I don't believe you're a prophet. Why would I say it? You're telling me to repeat after you and you're saying, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I don't believe you're a prophet. But finally he says it loud. The young boy says, no sooner had the adhan concluded and the Rasul passed his hand over my head as a senior would do to a junior. He says, by the qasam of Allah, something internally changed forever. That interaction was so powerful, that touch was so magical. I was compelled, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That young man who mocked the adhan of the muadhin became one of the muadhins of Makkah al-Mukarramah, Abu Mahdhur radiyallahu anhu. What? A young boy comes to the Rasul. He says, Ya Rasulullah, idhan li biz-zina. Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to do zina. Imagine your son comes to you, he says, Dad, I want to go to prom night, I want to get lit. My class is going for a party and I want to go. You say, Beta, I'm booking you a one-way ticket back to Pakistan. Prom ki baat kar raha hai. The Rasul comes, Ya Rasulullah, give me ijazah for zina. As a parent, try and think of your child asking you this question. Nahi, maine kya galati kar liya, maine kya, why is my child? We start questioning everything. The Rasul, did he question, you know what, have I failed in my mission? Why is a companion of mine asking me for permission to do zina? Like, have I failed as a Nabi? Rasul have never done that. The Rasul was very calm and collected. He calls the young boy close, he sends the other boys away. He sends the other students away, he calls this young man close. And the Rasul spoke to him. Today, unfortunately, especially in I don't know, maybe in the Arabs it's different, but in the Desi household, there's no speaking. There's no okay, this is what you want to do, this is where you want to go. Let's have a conversation. Let's discuss it. Bring your opinions, your thoughts to the table, and let's have dialogue. No. Immediately we get infuriated and we don't know how. So the Rasul calls him forward and he says, oh my young boy, would you like that someone done zina with your mother? Would you like that someone done zina with your sister? Would you like that someone done zina with your aunt? And after making him understand and after every question, the boy says, of course not, Ya Rasulullah. Of course not, of course not, Ya. Then Rasulullah says, then how would you be okay with doing zina with someone's sister or mother or whatever it may be? The Sahaba were ready to attack him when he asked the question. That short interaction was so powerful. And again he says, either the Rasul struck my chest or he passed his hand over my head. And he made a dua for me. Allahumma ghfir dhanbahu. Allahumma hassin farjahu. Oh Allah, you allow this young boy to guard his modesty. Oh Allah, you forgive this boy for the mistakes that he's made. He says, by the qasam of Allah, I never wanted to do zina ever again. That was the magical touch of. So Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu says, when I told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahu la ilaha illahu is the most powerful ayah, the Rasul placed his hand on my chest. And he said something which can be a dua, it can be a compliment. That, you know, you're blessed with regards to the knowledge that you have. One day, Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu is with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, I got a question. Generally the practice is, as the Rasul told some Sahaba, that ask Allah for afiyah. So when there's a companion raising his hands and saying, Ya Allah, give me sabr. Rasulullah says, don't ask for sabr, because if you're asking for patience, you're asking for a calamity to befall you upon which you will have to exercise patience. So don't ask for sabr, ask Allah for afiyah. Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu one day comes and he says, Ya Rasulullah, what's the reward for a fever? What's the reward for a fever? So Rasulullah tells him the reward for a fever is that, of course, your hasanat will be increased and so on and so forth. So he raises his hands, and of course this was for that companion. He raises his hands and he says, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-humma. Oh Allah, I'm asking you for a fever. But oh Allah, such a fever that doesn't stop me from my salah, the masjid, that doesn't stop me from hajj, and that doesn't stop me from jihad fi sabilik. He says, no sooner did I conclude my supplication, I was afflicted with a light fever for the duration of the rest of my life. When the time of salah would come, my fever would disappear. I would go to the masjid, I would come home, my fever would reappear. The time came for hajj, my fear would disappear. I would fulfill the hajj, I would come back. That was the yaqeen that he had. Today we don't have conviction, therefore we don't have commitment. In order to be committed to something, you have to be convicted and have full conviction with regards to it. The moment you lack in conviction, you definitely lack in commitment. So when you and I lack in conviction of the Hafiz will be told to elevate themselves to the highest rank in Jannah, naturally our commitment to memorizing or making our children memorize will fall, because there's a lack in conviction. Conviction is the foundation for everything. Every commitment has to be made with conviction. If you don't have conviction, then you don't have commitment. And that's how the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu was that companion who, when he walked into a gathering, people knew that this is the Qari of the Ummah. One day he comes in the Khilafah of, he was a Badri Sahabi as well, he participated in Badr. So the accolades that he had collected, because what did the Rasul say about the participants of Badr? That, oh Allah, whatever they do after today, oh Allah, you forgive them. Oh Allah, these Badri Sahaba are special. Some scholars have said that if you make dua after taking the name of the 313 participants of the Battle of Badr, that dua is accepted. One day in the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu an, someone comes to him. And Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu an, in his elderly age, he had full white hair, his head was fully white, his beard was fully white, an elderly man. But if you notice, those who gave their lives to Quran, regardless of how elderly became, Allah gave them sihah. Allah gave them strength. The Quran, there's a Qari from the Sab'a Qurra, he was deaf. But whenever he sat in front of his students to listen to the book of Allah, Allah allowed him to hear. There was a scholar who couldn't speak, he was mute. But whenever he sat with the Quran from the Qurra of Sab'a, he says that the moment I sat with the book of Allah, my tongue flowed with Quran. Today you and I are looking for miracles. Wallahi, Allah's my witness. One day in Mass, after Salatul Jum'ah, I left the masjid. And one brother said, Shaykh, I need some time. So I said, no problem. We went to the room and he spoke to me for half an hour. And in the half an hour, he basically said, Shaykh, I lived a very horrible life, a life of sin, a life of zina, and whatever it may have been. He said, about 7-8 years ago, I got married. And after 7-8 years of marriage, Allah still hasn't blessed me and my spouse with children. And he said, unfortunately, and it's a reality, the community, again, I'm speaking about the Desi community, we're very insensitive. We're very insensitive to someone struggling to get married, and the only question everyone asks them is, bro, when are you going to get married? You don't know the pain that person feels in their heart. Wallahi. When you go to a wedding and someone attends a wedding not being married and maybe being of age, and the first question people ask them is, when are you getting married? They may smile and laugh it off and it's joking and it's banter. But deep down you've struck a chord. Deep down you've hurt their feelings. When a sister can't have children or bear children and other aunties come to her, when are you going to have a child? What's taking so long? Or the grandparents come and say, we're waiting to become, wallahi, you don't understand the pain you've caused. So this brother came, he said, for 7-8 years we've been struggling, we've been hearing people passing remarks. We stopped going to dawats. We don't go out anymore. Because anytime we go out, the only question is, when are you going to have kids? يَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ إِنَاثًا وَيَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ الذُّكُورَ. Allah says, children are in the control of Allah. So then he says, Shaykh, what happened about 3 weeks ago? I made a conscious 3 weeks ago to start listening to Quran. So every day, I come down and in the morning I play Surah Rahman of Sheikh Mishari Al-Affasi. And he says, this has been the custom and the practice in my home every single day for the past up to a month. I believe it was a month, 6 weeks, whatever it was, a very short period of time. He says, Shaykh, every day, even in the car, instead of music or radio, Quran. On the way back home from work, Quran. Quran has taken over my home. My home is a Quran in terms of recitation. He said, Shaykh, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm still struggling with my spirituality. I'm only a Jumu'ah Muslim, as they call me as of now. I don't pray. But Quran has changed my life, and I'm hoping through Quran, the rest of my life will change. He says, Wallahi, Shaykh, 2 days ago, my wife called me, told me that we're expecting a child. I believe I heard it from Maulana Patel, Masjid Taqwa. He said one day he met Sheikh Shuraim. I believe it was Sheikh Shuraim, subject to correction, one of the Imams of the Haram. And he said the Imam of the Haram said, Allah tested my wife with cancer. Allah tested my wife with cancer, and as a consequence, we started to implement Quran as ruqya, Quran as shifa. And we would recite Fatiha multiple times and blow into water, and my wife would then drink that water. He says that Allah cured my wife to such a degree, her cancer is gone, and Allah blessed us with a child thereafter. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ. What did Ubayy ibn Ka'b say? Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu says, I used to do a khatma of Quran every 8 days. Every 8 days I done a khatma of Quran. When was the last time you and I done a khatma of Quran out of Ramadan? Be honest to yourselves. Every 8 days I do a khatma of Quran. You and I want success without having Quran in our lives. Wallahi, success can't come. He's a Sahabi, he's a Badri, he's the greatest Qari of the Ummah. Jannah is his. But he says, every 8 nights I completed one completion of the Quran. That's who Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu was. And that's who we need to endeavor to become. That's what we need to ensure. He's the one who narrated the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Surah Ikhlas, ta'dilu thuluth al-Quran, is 1/3 of the Quran. One person came to him and they asked him, Oh Ubayy, what night do you think is the night of Laylatul Qadr? So he said, according to me, based off what I've seen from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the 27th night of Ramadan is the night of the Qadr. Of course, if you look at the entirety of the compilation of ahadith, we know that the exact precise day of Laylatul Qadr hasn't been stipulated, but based off maybe what he saw, and that's why maybe there is a foundation for exerting ourselves to a greater degree on the 27th night. But of course, we should definitely exhaust ourselves the entirety of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. But he was the Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that narrated that narration. We conclude with one incident. At the time of the revelation, or when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed Salatul Taraweeh, the practice was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to his masjid for approximately 3 nights. By the 3rd night, the masjid was so full, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was fearful that Taraweeh would become an obligation that the Ummah won't be able to fulfill. So on the 4th night, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never came out. As a consequence, Sahaba would just make their own groups, one person with 2, 3, 4 people, and they would perform individual, yet communal in some capacity, Taraweeh. In the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu said, we've got so many different people and different groups. He congregated everyone behind one Imam. And that one Imam was none other than, of course, Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu. He was only with the Rasul for 10 years. But his Quran and the level of his Quran was unique and amazing. My message for tonight is, myself and yourselves included, our spouses and our children both, our sons and our daughters both, we need to have homes of Quran. Unfortunately, our homes have become homes where the TV is running 24/7 sometimes. Where there's just gaming after hours of gaming. And there's no Quran recited in the house. There's no environment of Quran. Ramadan comes, okay, now we'll take out the Quran. Now there'll be, these walls will bear testimony that Quran was recited in these homes. But what about out of Ramadan? Begin your day or end your day with Quran sometime. And I promise you the Quran will make everything. And if you have time, read 3 ayat of translation. 1 verse a day translation. One sheikh, he was leading salah in France, in a masjid in France. He says, one of my congregants came to me and said, Sheikh, today I was very, very confused about life. You know, people have a midlife crisis. He says, I was troubled, I was anxious, I was stressed. I never knew what to do. He was Arab. He says, Sheikh, when I came to the masjid, the ayat that you chose to recite in Quran, in salah, they served as a perfect answer to all the questions that I had. I entered anxious and I exit relieved. I'm totally content. That's what Quran will do for you. Have discipline with Quran. Don't deprive ourselves of Quran. Quran is your everything. You cannot have more valuable time than the time you spend with the book of Allah. The Quran is an intimate message. From Khaliq to Makhlooq, from Ma'bud to Abid, from creator to creation, from the one being worshipped to the worshipper. We make dua to Allah that He beautify our akhlaq with Quran. Allah allow us to spend our morning and our evening in Quran. Allah allow our lives to be alive and our akhlaq to be the akhlaq of Quran. And Allah allow us to depart from this dunya with the Quran on our tongues, with Allah happy with us happy with Allah. And we make dua that Allah grant maghfirah to Shaykh Bashir rahimahullah. Allah elevate his status and his maqam. And if you have an opportunity, recite Surah Ikhlas 3 times and send it as Isal Thawab for him. 62 years of dedication from a village in Multan in Pakistan to the city, the greatest city, the city of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He taught in the beginning in Jannatul Baqi'. His nikah was done in Jannatul Baqi'. His in Rawda, in the Riyadh of Jannah. He taught there, his nikah was done there, his janazah and his deceased body was held there. Ubayy ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu is buried in Jannatul Baqi'. Sheikh Bashir Ahmed Siddiq rahimahullah is also buried in that same graveyard. I saw a video online, Sheikh Bashir and one of my teachers in India, Sheikh Qari Siddiq Falahi, hafidhahullah. I studied the Thalatha Qira'at with him. I spent an entire year in India at that time. I saw a video of both of them meeting, 2 giants in the field and the science of Qira'at. Sheikh Bashir says to Qari Siddiq, अगर जन्नत में या क़ियामत के दिन या आखिरत में आपने मुझको नहीं देखा, मुझको तलाश करना. And take me, if you come in the hereafter and you don't see Bashir, then please, my request to you is look for Bashir, and wherever Bashir is, take him with you and walk him and take him into Jannah. Qari Siddiq looked at the humility of this man. Today we pray a few salat in the masjid and we feel we can pass judgment on the entire ummah. We make dua to Allah that He bless us with humility. He bless us with tawadu. We have 2 lessons left of this class. Some change has to come. Ilm is supposed to be transformative. Ilm is not we just go back and we remember the jokes or we remember one incident and that's it. Ilm is transformative. If our ilm isn't transforming us, then we have to be careful. Is it knowledge or is it information? There's a big difference between knowledge and information. You go on Google, you write a question, you receive the answer, that's info. That's information. Ilm is transformational. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.